stuff like that.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. We're emotional people.
I'm like, you say, who were the Nazi guards? Who were the fucking slave catchers tracking down slaves?
Yeah, I wouldn't compare it to that at all.
Man, when you're ripping...
It's got to start somewhere.
You're ripping mothers away from their kids.
I think you do a disservice to what Jews experienced during Nazi Germany.
Here's what's really happening. A podcast debate over a foreign gift is being framed as winning. But democracy isn't a scoreboard. Ethics and constitutional limits aren't optional, and framing potential violations as entertainment only lowers the bar for leadership. This is where democracy meets denial. Winning isn't about who talks loudest or shrugs off scrutiny. It's about following the rules even when it's inconvenient. Let's be real. We've seen this play before. Oversight becomes a punchline. Accountability becomes a vibe. And the audience is nudged to applaud, not reflect. The Constitution doesn't care about personalities, podcasts, or applause. It cares about limits on power, and those limits protect everyone. The takeaway is clear. Focus on leaders who respect the guardrails, who uphold the law, and who prioritize the public interest over spectacle. Confidence isn't leadership. Integrity is. And that's the lens we need to carry forward. This moment tells you more about democracy than any slogan. If you care about accountability and evidence-based leadership, hit subscribe, like, and share.
Everything that you're saying is 100% legitimate criticism, right?
Yes, but the U.S. Constitution prohibits government officials from accepting gifts from any king, prince, or foreign state.
I believe. So what, and then the pushback that you're going to get from anybody that is defensive of it is he's removed the veil, meaning this is what all presidents, right and left, have done.
Right. The Clinton Foundation does the same.
So the Clinton Foundation, when Hillary is the Secretary of State or something like that, I forget what it was, they were getting donations to the tune of like $50 million a year. I think
go back to doing it sneakily.
Well, or 250. The second she stops being Secretary of State, they shut down the foundation. So some people go, oh, this was just a vessel to get influence within the administration. And what people say is back in the day, they did it sneakily. And what Trump is doing, he's doing it in your face. Like, for example, Nancy Pelosi trades with insider information for decades. We all criticize it. We say it's wrong. Trump goes, Monday's going to be a crazy day. I'd buy some stocks if I were you. People go, how is he doing this? Is insider trading. There are a lot of people, I imagine, on Trump's side that go, well, finally, he's letting us get in on it. Before, it was just Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Now he's letting everybody get a fair shake. What I think the best criticism is, none of it should happen. You shouldn't accept the plane. Nancy shouldn't get insider trading. What we're doing is unconstitutional.
Trump's is a little different, but yes. And look, you can say...
Why do you think Trump's a little different?
Because she's using inside information that she has that's not available to the public to get these great tips or deals. He's manipulating the entire fucking market. To get what he wants. It's a bigger play. I mean,
I wouldn't say he's manipulating the market. What I would say is in this Trump coin is that he's creating a vehicle.
No, I'm not talking just about that. I'm talking about it all. But look, you could say.
I guess I'm sorry to interrupt, but I guess what I'm trying to say is this is a great opportunity for us to reform the way people in positions of political power, right and left, are able to accept legal bribes. And if we make it a partisan issue, then we'll just have bickering from the left and the right about, but your side does it, but your side does it. When instead we should all just go, both sides do it.
I agree, but this is a guy whose biggest campaign platform. You just got a boner
for Trump, bro. It's like he's doing the same shit they all do, bro.
Listen closely. This is the tell. The argument being made here isn't really about a jet. It's about redefining accountability until it disappears. When someone says, it's not Trump receiving the gift, it's the country, that sounds reasonable, until you remember that presidents don't get to personally decide what counts as national interest versus personal benefit. That line is supposed to blur a boundary the Constitution worked very hard to draw. Here's what that really exposes. Transparency is being used as a shield instead of a standard. The logic goes, if he says it out loud, it can't be wrong. But democracy doesn't work that way. Doing something in public doesn't magically make it ethical. It just makes the violation louder. And this is where democracy meets denial. There's also a psychological move happening here. Resentment is being substituted for principle. The idea that we pay for everything, so we deserve a $400 million thank you, turns foreign policy into a grievance economy. But constitutional limits aren't based on vibes or fairness feelings. They exist precisely to prevent powerful leaders from normalizing influence, even when it feels justified. And let's talk about the market argument. Saying something publicly doesn't automatically erase manipulation. When the most powerful political figure on the planet signals outcomes, markets react, not because of insider tips, but because power itself moves money. Pretending that's neutral is how accountability quietly collapses. Here's the bigger frame. Believing a leader is acting in the best interest of the future is not a substitute for evidence, rules, or oversight. Democracies don't survive on trust alone. They survive on limits, even when those limits are inconvenient to people we like. That's the takeaway. Good intentions don't override the Constitution, and patriotism isn't measured by how much power we excuse. It's measured by how consistently we demand accountability.
Oh, hold on a second. Hold on. He ran on draining the swamp.
Yes.
That's his biggest fucking platform.
Is true.
Not the second
Drain
time,
the
right?
swamp. He's adding acres to the swamp. He's importing alligators. He's doing whatever the fuck. I mean, this is the biggest swamp you've ever seen.
I would disagree because I think that I would disagree on what the swamp is.
So what is the swamp?
The swamp is Diddy's chest after a night.
I knew you were gonna say something like that.
We shoot, baby.
I guess the idea. I thought the swamp was like permanent government. I thought the swamp were these people that were the quote unquote deep state, like the people that were making decisions without the behest of the American people. But that's
being
what I thought
funded
the
by
swamp was.
corporate entities. And the corporate money
maybe,
that you
yeah.
can't see.
So technically, they're the biggest swamp.
He's basically
they're not listening to Congress.
He got rid of the swamp and he goes, "It's just me now." So if you want,
exactly right.
which
Right.
we should also disagree with.
Yes, they're not listening. They're not listening to Congress.
Yeah.
They're not following the Constitution. They are the swamp.
But I think, unfortunately, people like, and I'm not saying that you're wrong to have these feelings. I think a lot of people have these feelings, but they have such a hard on for Trump that they don't just go, hey, the system itself needs reform, and we should use this as an example, along with examples that past Republicans and Democrats have done, to reform it all.
I want that, but I also just simply want an elected official who follows the Constitution.
Right.
By the way, clearly you can do corruption in the guidelines of the Constitution.
Unfortunately,
we've been seeing people do that forever. But this is a person that's just saying fuck the Constitution. I don't want to turn on my Sunday morning news and see a president say he doesn't know if he has to uphold the Constitution. Yeah, I should.
Even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Or suspend habeas, whatchamacallit?
habeas corpus.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is the thing about, like, and I don't want to seem like I'm defending because habeas corpus it's basically the right to hold somebody without charging them,
Right.
which unfortunately throughout American history we have done. FDR did it with the internment camps during World War II. Lincoln did it during the Civil War.
If you believe in holding power accountable and defending our Constitution, hit like and subscribe. Let's keep these important conversations alive and make sure democracy always stays in the spotlight. Beat. Now, let's get back to the video.
It is like fundamental. Upholding habeas corpus is fundamental to the American identity. We cannot hold you without charging with you. Once we do that, it's a tyrannical dictatorship. So I 100% agree with that. To say that he's doing something that is novel or threatening potentially to do something that is novel or different than past presidents that we look at as heroes, as American icons, I would
the
say
internment
is
camps
unfair.
are definitely a stain.
Pardon?
The internment camps, not at the time they were accepted. We look back now and realize that was outrageous. And it was a money grab. All this shit is a fucking money grab.
What, the internment camps are a money grab?
Yeah, man. The Japanese controlled the most fertile parts of California. All the places where we grow most of our crops now, those were owned by Japanese farmers.
I thought the most fertile parts of California were Mexican women.
Well,
so yeah, I don't know if it was only a money grab. I think that there was like legitimate concerns about Legitimate is a tough thing. I don't think they did it the right way, but I think there were concerns about Japanese espionage.
Sure.
Just like
and
there's
there was
concerns
Japanese
about,
but
yeah.
I mean, but that's all this stuff, right? I mean, look, I don't know, did you guys watch the video of the mother being arrested this weekend in Massachusetts, and her daughters are trying to stop the ICE agents?
Which one? I've seen so many different videos.
Look, I know immigration is a problem. I'm not for a second saying we don't have to address that, but when you see stuff...
Listen closely. This is where Andrew Schulz and Charlamagne's discussion exposes a real tension in how we process policy and morality. Andrew Schulz points out that the guy off camera is a perfect example of what frustrates him about Democrats. Charlamagne listens as Andrew Schulz explains that this person is about to rail against a mother pulled away from her children, yet fails to acknowledge the broader legal and structural realities. Andrew Schulz makes it clear. I voted for Donald Trump to enforce immigration law. You just said illegal immigration is a problem. Great, but now you're falling for the Democrat playbook. Charlamagne nods as Schulz unpacks it. A few emotionally charged stories are used to tug at heartstrings, casting ICE as villains, while ignoring that this mother broke the law, and her kids can accompany her if deported. Here's what that really exposes, Andrew Schulz says. Empathy is being treated as political leverage instead of human response. Charlamagne and Schulz both highlight the contradiction. You can care about people and still demand that the law is upheld. It's not a matter of personal cruelty. It's a question of accountability in a constitutional system. Andrew Schulz continues, addressing the broader context. Joe Biden's administration created a crisis that magnifies these human tragedies. Schulz points out that he genuinely sees the situation as a structural problem. An invasion, he argues, invoking the Alien Enemies Act, even if the Supreme Court doesn't fully agree. Charlamagne listens as Schulz critiques the selective outrage, noting that everything the off-camera commentator says about Trump not draining the swamp is oversimplified. Andrew Schulz calls out the hypocrisy. What money grabs has Donald Trump made? He doesn't take a presidential salary. He's the only president in history to come out less wealthy after his first term. Charlamagne reacts as Schulz notes how absurd it is to treat Trump like a monster when structurally he's different from what critics claim. The takeaway, as Andrew Schulz frames it for Charlamagne and the audience, is clear. Personal attacks and selective outrage distort the conversation. Democracy depends on examining law, process, and accountability, not just reacting to heartstring stories. Ignoring these fundamentals is how democratic oversight quietly erodes.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. We're emotional people.
I'm like, you say, who were the Nazi guards? Who were the fucking slave catchers tracking down slaves?
Yeah, I wouldn't compare it to that at all.
Man, when you're ripping...
It's got to start somewhere.
You're ripping mothers away from their kids.
I think you do a disservice to what Jews experienced during Nazi Germany.
I'm saying that as a Jew.
And I think you're like half. And then I think
half of me says it. Then.
I think that you're doing a disservice to what slaves experienced.
But what Charles says is true. It didn't. Yes, the first day in 1938 or whatever, it looked like this.
Yeah.
And then not enough people said stuff, and it escalated and escalated and escalated, and then you got where you're going.
I saw a mom who took her two sons who had been going through the process of getting their papers, and they were going to the regular, I guess, check-ins or whatever that they have to do.
Yeah.
Snatched the two sons up.
Yeah. Listen,
we got to do something, but we have the money to do it a different way. Is what I'm saying. Yes,
it is heartbreaking. There's no question it is heartbreaking. You could make the argument, or they would make the argument, that these people are here illegally. They're breaking the law being here, whereas simply being Jewish in Germany in the late 1930s.
Yeah, that's a real comparison. The Holocaust and Japanese internment camps and deporting people that are here illegal in our country. Yeah, that's going to serve you well, that comparison, buddy. But we want to hear from you. What do you guys think about this conversation between Andrew Schulz and Charlamagne and this left-wing wacko off camera? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.
Listen closely. This is where Andrew Schulz and Charlamagne's discussion exposes a serious warning about how we handle history and moral context. Andrew Schulz points out that comparing current immigration enforcement to the Holocaust or Japanese internment camps is being dismissed by some off-camera voices. Charlamagne listens as Schulz explains that minimizing these events, undermines the lessons democracy depends on. Andrew Schulz says plainly, history isn't about equivalence. It's a warning about how unchecked power escalates. Charlamagne nods as Schulz continues. Mocking historical analogies trains audiences to ignore patterns, turning civic oversight into entertainment. Here's what that really exposes, Andrew Schulz emphasizes. Selective memory erodes democracy. Charlamagne and Schulz highlight the contradiction. We are told to learn from history, yet uncomfortable truths get treated as punchlines. That's how protections for rights and law are quietly ignored. Andrew Schulz frames the structural danger. Leaders can overstep, laws can bend, and rights can be disregarded, while debate is deflected toward name-calling or comment section reactions. Charlamagne listens as Schulz underscores the risk. Treating civic debate as spectacle weakens the accountability democracy requires. The takeaway, as Andrew Schulz frames it for Charlamagne and the audience, is clear. Learning from history isn't optional. Mocking it doesn't protect a nation. It endangers it. Democracy thrives on vigilance, reflection, and confronting uncomfortable truths. Ignoring these lessons lets power quietly consolidate.